I'm here.
Hey Steve, how are ya?
Mm, good. Have you been?
Good, good. Happy Monday.
Same to you.
How was your trip? It looked amazing.
It was neat. It was different from what we're used to. Europe and things like that are just more exciting and, more different, more history. But up there we had different history. We could look at some Viking sites and things like that. And there was geology to study.
Wow.
Like just like out west where you go to some of the parks and they have beautiful stuff to look at and things
Mhm.
like that, and little small fishing villages to run around in, and it was just a lot of walking, and we had a good time.
Wow, wow.
And we had good weather, which up there, it can be questionable because you're sitting right out there in the North Atlantic.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Yeah, hoping, in the next couple of years, my husband and I can um start traveling outside of the United States. This whole traveling thing has been very new to me. I didn't grow up traveling. I didn't grow up even leaving the state of Colorado, really. And so being a full-time RVer the past 3 years, it's really expanded so much about my life and my thinking and everything, just, traveling the United States. And so um maybe in the next couple years I'll be ready to like branch out and get outside of the United States. So
Well, the world is amazing, and the amount of history that's out
Mhm.
there is just incredible. I mean, in Egypt, you go back, five thousand
Mhm.
eight, 5,000 BC, and you're walking around on the sites, like they were just built yesterday. It's just phenomenal. You just can't believe it.
Yeah.
Takes your breath away.
I bet. And and two, just being, in a different culture, right? And being around people that believe differently and just being experienced to that is what I love so much about traveling too, right? And
Yeah, exactly.
mhm. So maybe, couple of years we'll get there. But so we're gonna hey Patrick, good morning.
Morning.
If it's okay with you, Steve, I'd like to give everybody, I want to be respectful of your time, but I also want to give a couple more people an opportunity to jump on here. I know we've got
Okay.
a lot of people that are at work, and so, trying to get on their lunch breaks and everything to jump on. So I want to give them just a minute to get in here.
Okay. No
Um,
problem.
but thank you again for being here, and um
Well,
I'm learning so much from you. I don't comment in the group very often, but I read all of it and I'm so intrigued. So,
it's an amazing group, don't you think? I mean, they
you know,
really are so respectful of one another, and there's
yeah.
there's nobody really pushing, and we don't allow a whole lot of spam going on in there. So
I appreciate everybody's just willingness to learn and to ask questions. And uh it is very much with this idea of like education, right? And that
Mhm.
everybody's in different places and we don't take for granted what somebody does or doesn't know, right? And so I do appreciate the group a lot because of that. So, but hey
Yeah.
Chris, hello.
Hi.
Well, give maybe just one more minute here and see if anybody else jumps on. And then, as always, this will go into the community. I actually might, Steve, if it's okay with you, I'd like to put your links in and maybe put this up on my YouTube channel if that's
Sure.
okay with you. Okay,
Uh-huh.
perfect. All right. Well, let's go ahead and just get started. If anybody jumps in, then they can watch the replay to catch anything that they missed. um, I am recording. All right. So, Steve, I'm going to put this kind of out to you. But first, I just want to again say thank you for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time and to share your knowledge with us. And so, I'd like to kind of do a little bit of Q&A back and forth, but I'd really like for you to share what you find is the most important piece of what it is that you do in your education, because I think that you talk about retirement income in a way that is so different than anybody else that I've ever heard. And in fact, I was talking with a financial advisor in one of my business groups a couple of weeks ago. And, we were just talking about things. And I asked him, I said, um, tell me, like, do you do a lot with, CEFs? And he looks at me and he said, he sat back in his chair and he was silent for a minute. And I thought, did I get something wrong? Like, what did I? And he said, Sarah, he said, in all my years, I think 22 years or something he's been an advisor. He said, "Nobody has ever asked me that question." And I said, "Well, I'm gonna say thank you to Steve for introducing me to this, to this new, I call it new because it was unfamiliar to me, but um it's just not widely talked about. So introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and let's just start the YCFs and what led you to this place right now and why you believe this is so important to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'm Steve Selengut. I before I became an income coach about 14 months ago, I was a private portfolio manager for individuals throughout the United States and some in Europe for over 40 years. When I sold my business, I was managing over $110 million for these people. And my emphasis on it was providing them, actually, many of them I grew up with. Many of them, a couple of them I went to high school with. One was my dentist. People we met on our honeymoon. I grew up investing and I developed a program where I emphasized the income that I generated, both from the dividends that stocks would pay. I never owned anything but dividend stocks. And of course, everybody's heard of investing in dividend stocks. It's a well-known approach. But I also traded, and I was since I had such a high quality content in my portfolio, I felt comfortable selling Exxon when it went up, buying it again when it went down. Buying General Electric when it was down, selling it when it was up until the time when it just stayed down. You know, but the type of thing was my emphasis was on quality investing,
Mm,
mainly because I was investing other people's money, and that's the type of thing you want to do when you have that type of responsibility. A, to keep your friends close and to prevent lawsuits when you're in this business, which is a very litigious society that we have, and investment advisors sometimes come under fire. Um, so I focused on quality. I diversified properly, meaning that no one ever had more than 4% of their portfolio in any one thing. Everything we owned had income generated and profit taken. So four ways we minimized our risk. And a lot of people don't, of course, think of profit taking as risk minimization until they go back to their experience. I don't know how old Patrick and Chris are. I know you probably haven't experienced as many corrections as I have, but everybody here has probably heard of the crash of 87, and they've heard of the dot-com bubble, and they've heard of the Great Recession in 2008, and even the COVID crisis thing. But in all of those things, they all turned out to be opportunities. And in the past, they always had been opportunities, particularly if you were not a speculator, particularly if you didn't have money tied up in things that often became the brunt or the target of some of these corrections, what went wrong. If you were based on quality and diversified and had income coming in, you could actually take advantage of corrections. And
mm,
that's what I've done in my history. I've always been a buyer when the market was going down, and I've always taken my profits regardless of which way the market was going.
mm.
Like I was taking profits today. I think I've taken a profit, at least one profit every day this year.
Wow. Wow.
So it's just something that you get once you get used to the idea of having two streams of dependable income, one more dependable than the other, the dividends and distributions you get as one, and the profit taking, which is another. And many of the people in the groups, Sarah, you've seen them say, my profits are the same as my distributions this year. I've made as much money profit taking as I've made in base
Mhm.
income, which is phenomenal. So yeah, the key thing that I do differently from everyone else, as you pointed out, I'm different, um, is that I focus on income instead of market value,
Mhm.
and that's the key element. And the product or the fund that I use to create my income and to trade is closed-end funds. And as you said, a lot of people don't even know they exist.
Mhm.
Um, and I hear that all the time, and and I guess it's understandably because the other two funds that are popular, the regular old mutual funds, which are actually younger than closed-end funds, I believe were the first fund. It was a trust vehicle that was developed back in the early 1800s, whereas
Mhm.
mutual funds were developed in the late 1800s or mid 1800s and are regular investment vehicles and not trusts. Um, and that's a key element and why they pay out so much money. Um, but they are the only fund that is really built on the assumption that they're going to pay out 95% of their income to their shareholders. So
Mhm.
they're not growth vehicles. I mean, think about any of the major companies out there. If they were giving their shareholders 95% of their income, there wouldn't be any growth companies because they wouldn't be able to do that.
Mhm.
I would appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody else would, if they give a lot more to their shareholders than they do to their chief executive officers, but
Mhm.
that's another issue.
Right.
So that
Right.
so that's me. I do it differently. I focus on income. I trade, but I don't it's not a day trading speculative type trading. I'd be perfectly willing to hold on one of these things forever and never sell it if it never went up for a profit, and I wouldn't care because it's still paying me 7, 8, 9%. I don't care if I hold it. I like to sell it and do it again, over
Mhm.
and over, just like a department store.
Yeah. One
Hold.
thing I just want to bring up, one thing that you've mentioned, it's mentioned a lot in your book. You mention it a lot when you talk, and I don't think that this is shared enough out in the world, is that when you talk about diversification, you really do break it down in a way, and you said it just a little bit ago that you try to not have any more than what 3 or 4% of our portfolio in any one area, right? And I
Anyone's
think
security, yeah.
yeah, and so you're able when you have your money diversified like that, you are able to navigate the ups and downs a lot easier because you're not losing it all per se, right? And I think that what we are generally taught, and I guess I'll speak for myself. What I've been generally taught is people freak out because they've got their money in one or two accounts, right? And the market goes crazy and we've lost all of it. And now we don't trust the market. We don't trust anything that's going on. And people assume that they're diversified, but they're really not. You're really breaking it down in a way that, again, I don't think that we're told. It's not talked about because we're told put your money in your 401k, put your money in a Roth, and you're good to go. You can live in retirement. Basically, I mean, those are the basics of what
I
is
know, I
shared.
know. Yeah, and it's 401ks are great. I mean, when I was growing up, we barely had savings accounts in banks. We IRAs weren't somewhere until late 80s, I think,
Mhm.
before there were even IRAs, and you could start with $1,500. So it wasn't that big a deal, and they didn't have Roth IRAs until, geez, way, way later than that. But the idea of the 401k is better than the savings and investment plans that I grew up with when I was employed. I was employed by other people for a while, for about 12 years. and I had a savings and investment plan, and it actually was the plan that helped me develop my diversification model because it
Mm,
was all equities and it was all over the place, every sector. And they even they talk about each sector that they're in and which stocks were in that sector and so on. But there were literally hundreds of different stocks in it. I was in a pension investment department of my program, of my employer. So my job was to fly around all over the country with the actual investment managers. I wasn't an investment manager at that time to talk to them about their plan. And we were converting them to a real time program. We were talking about real time. This was back I left there in 79. So we're talking about, it's 1977, 78. We're talking
mm,
about like the first computer system that was a real time quotes type situation and
mm,
real-time valuation of your program that you were in, really at the beginning of the computer age. It was really interesting. But what I learned a lot of things. I learned how to diversify from that. I learned how to make sure you had high quality and the income was also part of it, but not as much. They weren't big focused on income and they rarely took profits. And I think the biggest thing I learned about and what made me the profit taking freak that I am today is a story that in my first book I called Boeing. And I was on a plane with an investment manager and we were talking about the program and how we were going to present it to the next clients, when we got there and so on. And I said, I was looking at the portfolio the other day and I modeled my own portfolio over by it, some of the stock picks that I can afford, Um, but I couldn't help but notice that you had a gazillion dollars in Boeing. I mean, tens of millions of dollars in one company. And you have that in several companies, but in Boeing, you also had a profit of almost half of that was profit. And I said, why don't you take your profits and do something else? Boeing doesn't pay a lot of dividends. You could buy
mm,
stuff that does. You could put some money in your bond portion of the portfolio or, just why don't you do it? And he explained to me and something that will resonate with all investors if they hear it. He said, because Boeing is one of our biggest insurance clients, and they want us to have a gazillion dollars of their stock in
mm,
our investment portfolios. So it ain't going to get sold as long as they are our customers. And that's
mm,
the end of the story. And I said, that light bulb went off, and it said, whoa, 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 whoa. How many insurance companies are there? And how many of these plans are there? And how many of these companies have the exact same restrictions on their insurance providers, on their other providers, and so on, that they have to hold their stock?
mm,
And what does that make the stock market? You know, does that make the stock market prickly? Or is it totally an economic entity, or is it now a political entity as well?
mm.
So it made me say to myself, anytime, any stock, 10% profit, I'm out of there because I don't know who's going to fire who next, and so, and that was it. That's what set it all up. And that was back in the maybe 78. And
Mm,
then it had to be a little before then because by 79, my trading approach had generate generated me more, almost 5 times as much income a year as I was making with my lousy job. I
yeah.
had a lot of fun with that job traveling. I mean, not everybody gets into the Coors Brewery and has a draft beer out of the tap at the
Right.
factory. I did that, but you know, it wasn't it wasn't worth the commute to New York City from where I lived.
Right, right. Steve, what do you think that we need to know about income in retirement? Like what would you say that we need to know about that isn't vocalized out there a lot?
Well, if I guess the first thing that everybody should do, and particularly everybody that eventually listens to our discussion, is they should take a look at their portfolio and look at it and say, how much? income is my portfolio generating. Now, if it's your 401k or something like that, you don't really have a whole lot of control of it. But if you have a portfolio that's being managed by someone else or you're doing it yourself, you can look inside and say, okay, I'm making 3%. And there aren't going to be many of you out there that's going to be making more than 3%.
Mm,
And you're going to like this, particularly if it's managed by somebody else,
mm,
because investment management is no longer commission-based enterprise. It's a fee-based enterprise. And the fee is based on market value, not on income production.
mm,
So their incentive is on, and I'm not trying to throw too many stones at investment advisors because they don't have any control. It's the companies themselves that dictate that. When I was managing money for people, I was getting paid based on amount under management.
mhm,
And our portfolios weren't managed to grow market value. They did over time, of course, because you reinvested income and you're going to grow your market value when the market goes up. But we were there to take the profits then. We weren't going to hang on and hope it went on forever. So it's a different approach.
mhm.
And I've said too much without another question.
No, no. I love listening to you talk because I think this is all very important. And I think that even if people choose to not take another action, having the awareness and having the education of being able to look at their funds as they sit now, I think is
Well,
greatly important, right?
well, well, let's take my daughter who's, you know, around in her early 50s.
Mhm,
And she's got a 401k at this new company that she started working with. And she's also got a stock ownership plan, but she's got a 401k plan and there's a match, and they match. She can put up to what, 4% of, I don't even know what the rules are, but
mhm,
up to 4% of her salary. Um, and it'd be matched 100%, but anything above that isn't matched at all.
mhm,
So I told her, well, you're making 100% on your money with the match. So you've got to do that. You've got to do that. And I'll look with you at your alternative investments and give you some ideas of what they are so you can decide what to be in. But there's really no reason to put any more than the amount they match into that program. You'd be better off putting it into your own program and getting that started on generating income for retirement. And if you feel that you have even if you have a tax, you feel that you're going to have a tax problem, just put it in tax-free municipal bonds that are right now. You can get closed-end funds that are paying an average over 6%. I mean, in
mhm,
my in my selection universe, I call it. I mean, I've got 50 closed-end funds in municipal bonds, only in municipal bonds, and the average yield is around 6%.
mm,
So
mm.
6% tax-free when you're in a 35% tax bracket, it's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
it's relatively safe munis.
And would you give maybe a different, so let's say your daughter's in her 50s, let's say you're talking to somebody who's in their 70s, right? Like what would you say to them that
Okay.
maybe they're just maybe this is all new, right? And they're like, "Okay, maybe I need to generate some more income." Is that an
Yeah.
option? And what do you do then?
Yeah. No matter what they're invested in, that question of their advisor or their children, if they're the ones that are controlling the investments for them, or if they're doing themselves,
Mhm,
as they should be, looking at the income generated and then moving to an environment where income not only is what you want, but it's what the purpose of the investment is a smart move. And it it it's not putting your money in a savings account at the bank, because one of the bad things about the savings accounts are when interest rates go down, the value doesn't go up, but the amount you're getting for income goes down,
mhm,
which is what happened to a lot of people and why a lot of people were sucked into the stock market for the 12 years after the Great Recession, because interest rates got so low that they couldn't afford to close the CD rates.
Mhm.
So, and all the advisory business would tell them, well, you got to go in the stock market. It's the only place you're going to get returns. They
Mm.
didn't tell them that you can't spend returns, but that's where you're going to get them, you know? So, yeah, I know. So it's a different way of looking at investing the way I do
Mhm.
it, but it works whether you're young or old. I mean, if you're just
Mhm.
in high school and you got a summer job and you want to put some of it away for your future, put it away, let it grow with income. And if it has income, it's going to grow. I mean, just
Mm.
compound interest basically is the principle.
Yeah. So will you, and maybe it's just me, so maybe this is a selfish question to have you answer. Maybe the other gentlemen on this call already know this, but would you be able to explain to me the what I'm how do I even say this? Because I assume, and I assume because I'm gathering from the information that's been given to me, that say with my 401k or IRAs, that that is income in retirement. But I think that you explain it, it's not that, right? It is, and maybe I don't, maybe I am very uninformed, but would you break it down for me and really share like what's the benefit of the CEFs and really the income that you are speaking about versus, and I'm not saying they're bad products, right? I think that it's good to have those, but where's the difference? Because I think that people, we rely on just the 401k and the IRAs, right, as our income in retirement, but it's not really income per se.
It's not. It has the ability to produce income,
Mhm.
but for the most part, it's not designed to generate income. It's just designed to give you a vehicle where you can safely put your money in good quality mutual fund and typically ETFs and some of them,
Mhm.
um, options that you can put them into without taking really severe risks. It's a good place to be because it's going to accumulate. It's generally going to go up in market value over time, but your timing could be bad if you happen to retire in 2020 in March. You know what I mean? When whoop, or 2008. So
Mhm.
it's not designed to produce income. It's designed to produce safety and growth. And it generally does a good job at that.
Mhm.
But it's at the whim of the stock market what it's actually worth. And so when you have the opportunity to get your hands on it and you push it into your IRA, you transfer it into your IRA as a cash deposit. At that point, you've actually got the control to say, I'm going to start buying things that produce income. But
Mhm.
until then, you're kind of stuck. So you have to look at, yeah, you have to learn something about what an investment portfolio is if you really want to take advantage of an IRA.
Mhm.
And there's two things you got to know. You got to know that you're invested in the stock market and that there are opportunities within your IRA that may be in the bond market, income purpose securities, and you have growth purpose securities. So if you then take it one step further, you say securities are these two different types of securities react to changes in the market and in interest rates in different ways. The income securities will always go up in value when interest rates go down and down when interest rates go up. The stock market is more a function of the economy than anything else. Good times, good economy, high employment, low inflation, the market's going up.
Mhm.
You know, any of those things change and or uncertainty is magnified by a political climate or wars around the world and stuff like that, the market tends to get weaker because people suspect and they want to move their money into safer things, which is what the other side is, the income side.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you know that and you're in a 401k and you've got a 30-year career ahead of you, you can you can use what I describe in the book as the market cycle to your benefit. Like if you know, you can't live in a community and have a 401k and not hear the news about what the stock market is doing. It's pervasive. You can't
Right.
escape it. Even on vacation, they're going to tell you what happened on Wall Street, no matter where in the world you are. So,
Mhm.
but the thing is, if you know that you're at an all-time high in the stock market, you know that your 401k, the prices of your total S&P fund or your all equity fund or your uh, major markets in your equity fund, all anything with equity or growth in it, you know they're going to be at their all-time high. So take some of it out
Mhm.
and move it into the other stuff, the boring stuff that says, you know, constant income fund, or something like that. Just take your profits. And then when the market goes down again, you take it back and you put it in the market when the market is lower. So over the years, you can, and I'm not going to use the word play because it's not playing, you can use what you see happening around you in the financial sphere to you can make it work to your advantage by that, but that's really all you can do when you have a 401k, unless it's your own business and you're the one that's calling the shots in the 401k and it's just you and your spouse or whomever. I was
Mhm.
talking to a guy this morning who has his own company and he has a 401k and it's his wife's part of the 401k and his part of the 401k, and that's it. The employees aren't in it for some. And I think because he just uses contractors. He doesn't have any actual
Mm.
employees, so he can do that. I did the same thing with the SEP IRA. My
Mhm.
wife and I were the only people in the SEP IRA,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So you can work with your 401k, but it's tough. It's tight.
Mhm.
But as soon as you can get out of it, don't ever leave one in a company and let it sit there, and not take it with you. Take it with you, put it into an IRA, and then you can start to invest it yourself, and you can make it work for you a lot harder
Mm.
by producing income. And closed-end funds, I find, are the best, and I use that with my clients for the last 25 years or so. Before that, I was a stock market investor in individual bonds, and I had they called not bond funds, but they were like I forget what they even called, but they were uh, somebody had a portfolio of bonds and you got paid out the principal and interest and they liquidated after a certain number of years. And then there were Ginnie Maes back in the day that were another good source of income in
Mm.
addition to preferred stocks and the individual bonds. But once I discovered that closed-end funds made all those archaic types of securities liquid instead of, where you had to go jump through hoops to get a price on them and try to sell them. It was almost impossible. But closed-end funds make them liquid. You trade them like stocks.
Mhm.
So everybody was in. All my clients all of a sudden were in. I had one guy. I mean, the investment community is so far behind. They, on your statement, if you're in closed-end funds, they're going to show them as stocks because they trade like stocks. It can be a portfolio full of municipal bonds, and they're going to tell you in the stock market. I had a guy that fired me, a guy out in Long Island. He was a doctor, and he told me he wanted to be in municipal bonds, and I had a laddered portfolio of municipal bonds for this guy, and as they matured, I switched them into closed-end municipal bond funds, which were paying at least 50% more in interest. And he'd get his statement. Oh my God, what have you done with my money? You put it all in the stock market. No, you don't own any stocks. He says, it says here I'm 100% in the stock market. I said, but you look at the names. This says California municipal bonds. This one says diversified municipal bonds. They're municipal bonds. And to him, they were stocks.
Mhm.
Oh, he wasn't happy with me. So anyway, but there are so many there are in addition to closed-end funds, which I find to be the best and easiest to deal with, and the ones that have me more in mind than the market value of what the portfolio is and how, how much money they're paying their managers to bring you all this growth. Um, I like them best, but there are there are mutual funds that pay over 6 and 7%. There Vanguard, even Vanguard, good mutual funds. There are ETFs. I mean, I have a what I call universe of 20 ETFs that are paying an average of 10%. I mean, they're out there.
Mm.
Your broker can get them for you. It doesn't have to be CEFs. He's heard of ETFs and he's heard of mutual funds. What he doesn't want to hear about is an emphasis on income because he doesn't get paid any extra for you making more income. He gets paid extra for you having a higher market value. And
Mm.
high income vehicles typically do not grow as fast as. I mean, look at the Nasdaq, for example, where everybody goes to speculate. I mean, less than a third of the Nasdaq securities even pay dividends.
Mm.
So
Wow. Well, I'm being kind of selfish here. I'd like to open it up. Patrick or Chris, if you guys have any questions, I'd love for you to jump in and ask. Um, I I also, I mean, I've got your book here, like reading it
I
through. I
see
definitely
you have tabs in it too, huh?
I do because and my husband, I'll be real honest, he's not much of a reader, but I told him, I said, you really need to pick this up and read it because he picks up on some of the stuff a lot more than I do. Even though I work with people and their money, this is a new way of thinking for me. And he has always been a little bit ahead of the game. And I have been a little bit behind when it comes to investing. Uh because it's felt very scary to me for many years, right? And I didn't have the information, um I didn't have the education to make an informed decision. And so I've read through your book twice now, tabs in there. I'm in part of your community and I'm going to make sure that you guys all have information to get um around Steve because the knowledge that you share and the help that you give is amazing. I really appreciate that. Anything else that you wanna share that you just feel like needs to be said that you want people to know?
Well, I think you just said it. It's the
Mm.
and you said it, I thought real well. I mean, you have to learn about. You can't just go say, I'm going to buy that stock, and that's going to be the beginning of my investment portfolio. You have to educate yourself. I mean, how many people even know that a stock um, means you actually own a piece of that piece of the action,
Mhm.
and that a bond is that you have loaned money to that entity that you own the stock in. You actually can own a bond without owning the stock, but you really need to educate yourself to know what risks are involved with each type of investment in general, which ones are safer than others. In the one of the things in the book, which you'll find in many different economics or business or investing texts, is that risk pyramid. That risk pyramid was something that I mentioned to a couple of guys in the group early on, and we decided that we would take one of these out of an old economics text. We take a risk pyramid. We did a survey of all the people in who had gotten some experience with closed-end funds in the group, and we said, let's name the different types of groups, and are they income focused or are they equity or are they growth focused? Are they equity? And we divided this, and we came up with this pyramid. We built it. We built this, you know, from this old textbook. We didn't build the concept of the pyramid. I mean, there's one guy who showed me how he had changed the pyramid into a ladder because he could think in terms of a ladder easier than a pyramid. And,
Mm.
he'd have the different things at the bottom rung and then going up. Which ones were most risky? The ones that you're hanging on at the top of the ladder. They're the most risky,
Mhm.
right? So I thought that was kind of cool. So we've got like, I think it's 38 or 40 different types of closed-end funds on
Mhm.
there, and each has a different degree of risk. The lower, anything that involves debt securities, from real estate mortgages to preferred stocks to bonds, government bonds, municipal bonds, that types of stuff is less risky than stuff that involves the ownership of corporations, like common stocks and so forth, and different types. And then you get into the pros and cons of it, whether they're Pacific Rim, is that more risky than South America? Well, no, probably South America is more risky than Pacific.
Mhm.
So if they have different classes, where are they in this pyramid? But any good textbook on investing in general investment facts and economics, a little bit understanding how the economy works, and
Mhm.
you'd know that it's not a good idea to have tariffs on everything that comes into the United States. If you read one of those texts, we wind up paying for it, baby.
Mhm.
Prices go up because you're gonna.
Mhm.
So yeah. Anyway, if you do get yourself educated before you
Mhm.
go throw money at the stock market. I mean, it's just crazy to go out there and take a tip or listen to somebody and buy this hot new issue because it's going through the moon like it's the next Microsoft. It's not the next.
Mhm.
I mean, I think it's almost 90% of people who buy new issues or IPOs, they're not buying the next Google. It just
Wow.
doesn't happen that easily. It's better to buy Google after it's become a successful company.
Hmm.
I never buy anything that's not profitable, and that's an easy test. None of them make profits. When did how long was um, Tesla in operation before it made its first profit? Years, three
Yeah.
years. How long was Microsoft in operation before it paid its first dividend? Decades. This is the truth. I mean, you're not going to get anything from this company other than that rise in market value. And most of you are not going to say, I have a target of this amount of profit and I'm going to sell it. And I'm going to reinvest that, or I'll sell half of it. And then I'm going to reinvest that safely and I'll see what happens to the other half of my investment. And that's a pretty smart way to go when you do hit a winner. If you hit an Amazon or a Google, and it's going up like crazy, take some of the profit, reinvest that safely, and it
Mhm.
goes up some more, do it again, do it again, do it again. I do the same thing with the market cycle. I'm buying when it's down and then it goes up. I'm taking profits. I'm buying some more stuff with the profits and then I'm taking it, I'm doing it again, doing it again. So even at the top of the market, I don't have 50% of my portfolio in unrealized gains. I have
Mhm.
50% more portfolio invested in my holdings that are producing income.
Mhm.
So when it goes down, I have a lot more income to spend to help it go
Mhm.
back up again.
Yeah. And I think that's the piece that isn't communicated widely, right?
Yeah,
Like that part right there isn't communicated.
yeah. I think it's all summed up on the cover of the book.
Mhm.
And it says, you know, market value fuels the ego. Oh, my market value is so great. I'm so smart. I bought this and it's gone up and up and up. And that's the ego because you
Mhm.
can't spend that. Can't
Yeah.
spend market value. And income fuels the yacht. So
Mhm.
see that yacht out there, baby? That's I pay for the gas that goes into that sucker with the income I make, not with the market value. Can't do that.
Mhm.
That's the
Yeah.
big difference. So focus on income,
Mhm.
quality, diversify, income production, right? There you go. Easy peasy.
Easy enough. That's what I was just gonna say, right? Easy enough. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it.
Yeah, you don't have to have 50 years of experience to get to that point, but 5, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think you gotta do the homework and
Right.
and and start slow and don't put a lot of money in any one thing. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, and that's where my husband and I are starting slow and starting to, again, truthfully, with the help of your book and educating me on some of this, I'm like, so here's where we can start doing things a little bit differently, right? It changes the way that I have been thinking about money, changes the way that we both have been um contributing and everything. And I will say, I don't think we've done anything bad. I don't think there's anything bad that people do. I think that we make decisions based on the information that we have at the time, right?
Sure.
And that should, I think, all be celebrated. And then when we learn something new, when we become more educated, we become more educated consumers, and we can then make a different decision that might benefit us more going forward, right? And so that's what I ultimately love to that message to send out to people, because I think that I want people to continue to do what they are doing with the information that they have, but I also want you to be learning more. There's always something to learn. We can all become a little bit better, a little bit more educated in an area. Um, and then we can choose to do something different. We can choose to stay, but we can also choose to do something different. And I think that puts the power in our hands and takes, um, can't blame anybody else for anything, right? It really is taking responsibility for where we're at and the choices that we make. So, um, Steve, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I'm going to put all of your links in, send it out so everybody knows where to get in touch with you. I think that you are truthfully a wealth of knowledge. Um, I have learned so much from you in multiple ways. We've been on, a couple of podcasts and just chatting, and I learned something new from you all the time. So thank you so much for taking time to be here. I appreciate you so much. Um, I've shared this book, I think, with everybody because I mean, I love it. I always tell people like they're, here tons of information. It literally sits next to me all the time. So thank you again. Guys, I really, really encourage you to reach out, have a conversation with Steve, get into the Facebook group. The information shared is about helping, it's about educating. It's not, it's just from this heart of serving. And that's what I appreciate about the group. So thank you very much for being here.
We're having a Q&A in November 13th also
Awesome.
for the group members. Yeah.
Well, I'll send that out. I'll get it out to everybody so they can get into the group and take advantage of that, because you definitely don't want to miss it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All
Thank you so
right.
much for having me on your program.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Mhm.